Have you ever felt stuck between where you were and where you want to be? Like you're just waiting for God to just finally make that move. That's exactly where Israel was in the wilderness. But the wilderness wasn't a delay in God's promise. The wilderness was actually part of that promise. Welcome back, friends. If you're new here, my name is Michelle, and this is Rooted in the Word, a mini Bible word study series where we slow down, dig deeper, and look at the heart behind words that we often read right past. Today, we are looking at the word wilderness, specifically through the book of Numbers. If you're not familiar with the book of Numbers, it takes place right after God has rescued his people from Egypt. They're no longer slaves, but they're not quite yet at the promised land either. They're in that in-between place, the wilderness. Now, Numbers is really a story about God leading his people. He's shaping their heart and teaching them how to trust him literally one step at a time. It's filled with moments of obedience, complaining, frustration, forgiveness, and most importantly, grace. And through it all, we see that the wilderness wasn't just this random place where they were left wandering. It was the place that God used to prepare them for what was next. So just as before, I have my Bible here and all my notes. So I am going to be looking down as we go along in this video just to make sure that I have all of my things in order. So I was reading through Numbers chapter 9, and as I was reading through it, something that kept popping up and brought to my attention was that word wilderness. As soon as I came across it, I circled it and it kept popping up again and again. And from what I've heard so far, if something is popping out to you, or if there's a word that is constantly repeating itself, there is a reason for that. So I went ahead and looked up the word wilderness to see if there was a deeper meaning to that in this chapter that I was reading, and here is what I found. So context is everything. So the first thing I did was look up what that word wilderness means in Hebrew. And the word wilderness in Hebrew is midbar, which comes from the root word dabar, meaning to speak. So because of its root meaning, it's understood as place of the word where God speaks clearly to people like Moses and Elijah. Now, I don't know about you, but I love the fact that the Hebrew word for wilderness comes from the root word that means to speak. It's such a beautiful reminder that even when life is quiet and it feels uncertain, God is still speaking to us, just in a different way than we expected. Now, let's go ahead and jump right back into Numbers 9. So as I mentioned earlier, at this point, God has already delivered them out of Egypt. And right here at the beginning of Numbers 9, God stops Moses. They have been walking for exactly 1 year since the last Passover. They have been walking in the wilderness, and newsflash, they're going to be walking in the wilderness for quite some time after this. But it has been exactly 1 year since the last Passover at this point. Now, if you're not familiar with Passover, the first Passover happened back in Egypt. It was when God told all the Israelites to sacrifice a lamb and to smear the blood at their front door. That way, when the last plague passed by, it would pass over their door, sparing them, and it is what ultimately leads them to be able to get freed out of Egypt. So it has been exactly 1 year since the original Passover, and God is stopping them. He's telling them to stop right here, remember the Passover, remember the deliverance, remember his faithfulness right here, right where they are in the wilderness. This wilderness is their in between. They are in between where God saved them from slavery and the promise that God is giving them, the promised land of Canaan. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that word wilderness again. The wilderness represents in between spaces of our lives. The waiting seasons, the uncertainties, the times we feel like we are not there yet. How many times have you felt that in your life? And what God is showing Israel here is that his faithfulness is not dependent on location or circumstances. Now let's think about that part there for a second, because I know personally for myself, there's been so many times where I have felt stuck, or I have been in a season of hurt, of long waitings, and I've asked myself, God, where are you? And this is telling us that he has been there all along. We just need to understand that everything that God does is for a reason. He's growing you, and he wants you to sit there and reach out to him and grow closer to him. Again, it's in those seasons where we think that God is far, but he's actually so close, because you're calling out to him and you seek him more. So he's trying to teach them to be faithful even here, even in these waiting seasons. He's showing them that they can still worship. He's showing them that they can still remember where they came from, remember what he pulled them out of, and that they still belong even in a barren place. The wilderness becomes their testing ground of obedience, just like in our lives. It proves trust. When life is comfortable, obedience becomes routine. But when you're tired, you're wandering, and you're unsure of where you're going, obedience then becomes worship. God's covenant did not depend on the land that he promised them. Even before they reached the promised land, they already had what mattered most, which was God himself. The wilderness is also the space where God reveals his mercy. So if we continue on in the scripture and look at Numbers 9 verse 6, there are these certain men that want to be able to celebrate Passover, but according to some previous rules that were made, they are not allowed to, because they are considered unclean right now, because they were around a dead body or touched the dead body. And they go to Moses and tell him that they want to celebrate it, but they can't right now. And why is it that they can't? And instead of Moses just telling them, that's the rule, you can't do it, he says, hold on, let me go and see what God says about this. And here is where God shows his mercy again. He tells them, if you really want to celebrate the Passover, you can celebrate it 1 month later. So he comes up with what is known as the second Passover, because after that, they won't be considered unclean anymore, and they can celebrate it. So this little part right here, you might just skim right through it, but it is showing God's mercy. He is giving them that second chance to be able to celebrate Passover and still participate in remembering his faithfulness. And here are some biblical patterns of the wilderness that we see. Number one that I have is Moses met God in the wilderness before leading his people. Israel learned obedience and how to trust him. Elijah heard God's whisper in the wilderness, and even Jesus was tested in the wilderness before beginning his ministry. I think we all have those seasons that feel like wilderness, in motherhood, in marriage, even in our faith, where we're waiting for the next thing, wondering, God, are you still leading? But maybe the wilderness isn't the place where we're forgotten. It's the place where we finally slow down enough to be able to hear him. Keep trusting, keep waiting, and keep looking for the cloud, because he is always leading you. He's never left you. Thank you so much for joining me in this Rooted in the Word study. If you're walking through a wilderness season right now, I'd love to hear how I can pray for you. Just leave a comment below, or you can even join our Facebook group, because you don't have to walk this alone. And if you have not done so already, don't forget to like and subscribe. Make sure you hit the little notification bell so that you don't miss our next video. As always, friends, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye everyone.